Good morning and welcome again to Zip Over to Zack. My name's Zack Polanski. I'm the Green Party London Assembly candidate at number 3 on the list. I'm supporting the work of our present Green Assembly members, Sean Berry and Caroline Russell. We will be returning them hopefully, and I'll be joining them in City Hall along with many other Greens. Every week on the show, we take a big issue, often a global issue or an issue happening in London, and just turn it into a relatable, quick 20-minute conversation. Just before we do, a little bit about what I've been up to this week. It's been a really busy week, actually. And while I'm not keen for us to return to a new normal, whatever that might be, it has been nice to see people out campaigning again and things moving in kind of a more hopeful direction. So for instance, this weekend, I was outside the South Bank Centre with the unions, actually, campaigning against the redundancies and the arts cuts. And being an actor, when I'm not doing this, it's something that's really dear to me and dear to my heart. It's absolutely vital that our cultural sector is saved. We stop these redundancies, that the furloughs extended, and indeed, it's another reason why we need a universal basic income. It was quite moving to be stood there and to see the amount of people who came out on not the warmest day just to come and support the arts. And I think a huge thing at the moment is this pandemic has caused this kind of huge question around our society about what sort of society do we need to be? Do we want to go back to what we were before? And if we don't, where are the kind of new future visions? And I really believe deeply that artists, whether it's theatre, whether it's film, whether it's music or painting or whatever your art is, that's where the imagination is. And we absolutely need to be nurturing and supporting that at the moment. So an absolute pleasure to be at the rally and to speak against the cuts. And then yesterday, as we know, Extinction Rebellion are back. We're giving solidarity to them in their specific actions. So yesterday, I was at Stop the Silvertown Tunnel Coalition. This is a crazy £2.1 billion project that Sadiq Khan is planning to build. Actually, Sean Berry did a show on this just a few weeks ago, maybe a couple of months ago now, actually, time's starting to mix. It's outrageous that during a climate emergency, Mayor Sadiq Khan thinks it's appropriate to be building more roads in London. So it was really good to feel the solidarity and the strength of feeling there yesterday in Stratford. Also, Extinction Rebellion are doing actions all week, including today is the opening of Parliament, and Caroline Russell will be there speaking, and I'll be hoping to pop along later too. So today, though, talking about issues in London, well, there's one issue that I don't know if you'd call it gentrification, and this is something I want to discuss with my guest, exactly what it is that's going on. But there has been a worrying trend for a long time, both in London and in the cities, Paris being another obvious example, of people being priced out of their homes in zones 1 and 2 and slowly being pushed to other zones. And this is happening to traders too. And somewhere where this is really obvious, purely because of the size of it, is Elephant and Castle, where there's a major redevelopment going on, where people have been turfed out. To give more details, I'm really, it's a privilege to be joined by Santiago Peluffo. He's from a campaign called Latin Elephants. In fact, he's one of the co-organisers. So first of all, welcome to the show, Santiago.
Thank you, Zack. Pleasure.
And I guess in your own words, what do Latin Elephant do and what do you stand for?
Well, we are a local charity working to improve and advocate for inclusive developments. More recently, we have been quite active in the last 4 years. We're working alongside the traders in Elephant and Castle. As you know, and as you said, there's been a massive redevelopment, and the shopping center, the historic shopping center, is due to be closed in 4 weeks' time, and still, a significant number of local independent traders still have nowhere to go, and we have been advocating for the rights and for the inclusion of these traders who basically make the community in the plans.
And what would you say to people, this is certainly not my point of view, but people would say that this is essentially a natural kind of byproduct of capitalism, that things change, that things move on, and if you can't survive, then you need to do something else?
Well, I mean, from day one, we always said that we were not opposing development as such. We were opposing this particular development because it didn't bring benefits for the local community. So our argument was always for a trader-led or for a council-led regeneration rather than a developer-led regeneration. which at times we thought it was the case. This was a very long process. Obviously, it has had significant gains on behalf of the traders because initially the developers, the Lancy, did not come up with any relocation strategy. So there was essentially no acknowledgement of the traders who have been there for 15, 20, in some cases up to 25 plus years. And yes, it is a phenomenon that is happening not just in Elephant and Castle, not just in Southwark, across London, unfortunately, across the country. We've been invited to several conferences in the past few years, and I can tell you that we've had comments and questions from campaigners and lecturers from different parts of the UK, telling us how this is a phenomenon that it's difficult to stop. So again, it's not about putting barriers to these developments, but it's rather pushing and advocating for the community and the traders in this case to be an active part of this development, because who's the regeneration for if not?
Excellent. Sorry, my internet went for a second there, which isn't ideal when you're interviewing someone. And now you mentioned the Lancy, who are the redevelopers, and also I know Southwark Council also been playing a role in this. What have been your relationships with both the Lancy and Southwark Council?
So, like I said, it's a very long process. At a certain point, probably at the beginning, when the consultation was open and was an active process for all parties involved. We've had several meetings. Actually, one of the three main relocation sites for the traders was a direct result of meetings that we've had with the Lancy, because like I said at the beginning, there were no specific plans for the traders. As a result of our advocacy work and our evidence-based objections to the scheme, we managed to get certain concessions, one of which was as part of these meetings. Another relocation site is a proposal that Southwark put forward, which is Parent House, refurbishing old garages. And it's both things, obviously, something that we welcomed. They could have been better, yes. They could have been bigger, yes, but still within the limits and the constraints of the actual geographical site. This is the best thing that they said they could come up with. And nevertheless, dozens of traders still have a place to go.
I really like the fact you make that point, because I think it's important that very often in these kind of stories and issues, the power all goes one way, and it just seems to be disastrous for the people on the ground. But would it be fair to say that there has been small successes during this campaign? Definitely not everything that we wanted, and we didn't start redevelopment. But there's been those little wins along the way.
Absolutely. I mean, not just because personally and on behalf of the charity I represent, I am very much involved in the process, but also from an external point of view, we have to acknowledge that, like I said at the beginning, there wasn't a relocation strategy, there wasn't a relocation fund, there were no proposed relocation sites, just the one with 7 units when we were counting over 100 independent businesses 2 years ago. There was not even the 10% affordable retail space in the new development, which is policy. Social housing, which is not particularly our expertise at Latin Elephant, but within the broader campaign, we have also campaigned. So there were so many different gains and improvements up until recently, because in January, Southwark Council pledged £200,000 extra for those traders who don't have a space, although what they want is not the money to relocate, but an actual site to relocate to, together with that fund. So we're continuing to advocate for these alternative spaces. But all along, it has been a very dynamic, continuous process in which there have been several gains, sure.
And well done to you and all the campaigns for that. I'm interested in how all of those campaigns began. So presumably at some point there was whispers and rumours that this redevelopment was going to happen. And then was it just people coming together, or what was that process?
For people who are not familiar to the area, Elephant and Castle has been deemed for redevelopment for the past maybe 2 decades or so. So the community that is well established there, mainly Latin Americans, but many other migrant ethnic backgrounds that make the Elephant, and working class communities. They have been told that that site's going to be redeveloped for many years. Actually, the Strata Tower, which was the first tall building erected, I think is over 15 years now. And then obviously the demolition of the Haygate estate, that took maybe a decade, was finished 5 or 6 years ago. So it's a very long process. And now this seems to be another phase of the whole big plans that the council and the developers had to redevelop the area. So let's say that the alarms were always there, were quite active in terms of people signing new leases, knowing that maybe in 6 years' time, 10 years' time, that place was going to be refurbished or knocked down.
And Latin Elephant involved with other campaigns too, or is this very much specifically what they're focused on at the moment?
So what changed from all these rumors that you were referring to was that specifically Delancey came with a very specific proposal to demolish the shopping center, and they sought planning permission in 2016, 2017. That's the consultation period. And at the time, we were very much focused just on the Latin American trees, which were very numerous. But then the campaign grew bigger because obviously all of the traders, regardless of the background, were all being directly affected. So the campaign grew, and then because of the scheme, of the size of the scheme and the housing involved, the University of Arts London, the new proposed cinema, the new tube station, etc., we partnered with different local organizations such as the 35% Group, the Welfare Society at the time, the Tabernacle Church, the Bingo Hall upstairs, who used to be quite popular in the shopping center, Southwark Law Center, and different other local groups. And together we formed the wider Up the Elephant campaign, again campaigning for inclusive development.
Fantastic. And as I said, I've been to some of the Up the Elephant meetings, and it's always amazing to see everyone in the room, not professional politicians, but just people coming together to change their community. It's always beautiful to see. Sometimes when that happens, though, you get these fractious kind of community groups. It looks to me like Up the Elephant and Latin Elephant and the other groups have actually worked together really well.
Yeah, I think for us as a charity as well, the element of empowerment for the local community and specifically the traders is very important. So as part of this campaign, we also designed and deliver several free workshops for traders in planning law. So they were skilled in how to respond to a consultation, and then we invited them to every single meeting for the past 4 years. Some went on even to 9 p.m. At nights in the weekdays, some on the weekends. So like you said, it has been moving actually to see support also from the student community at UAL, who are opposing their own authorities, who are partnering with the developer for the demolition of the shopping center, local residents, many people who realize that this regeneration should be and must be for the local community.
That's so cool. I didn't know that education piece had gone on. What was the feedback like? Because political and administrative education is something that the Green Party are very passionate about. So I'm interested.
Has been overwhelming at the most hot time when the consultation was on and the application was going for a vote, a planning committee. We've had several gatherings and protests at the Elephant, at Southwark Council, and loads of coverage from different media, including the BBC, obviously, which showed the strength, the importance of this topic, like I said before, not just for Elephant or Southwark, but for London as a city who has been redeveloped daily, and the students obviously, yeah, they realized that they do need a new campus because it's an old building and they need new facilities, but that doesn't have to come at the expense of a displacement of a community. And I think this was the reason why they joined, and they're still around.
Brilliant. And my final question, I guess, about Delancey specifically, is I know they've said they've put up this relocation fund and then an extra £200,000. I think they've let people be rent-free for the last few weeks. What would you say in response to their kind of claims that they're being quite reasonable about?
Like I said, we always were open to dialogue, and I think that most of the concessions were as a result of this dialogue. And I think this is how basically the democratic process works. You need to consult the community, you need to liaise with local groups, and you need to improve your proposals if they're not sufficient and if you don't find support. And I think that we still think, and we've been saying this for the past 2-3 years, that the relocation fund, which is £634,000, but you need to think that this is divided by, well, nearly, it should be divided by nearly 90 traders, although most of them won't have relocation, but in the best case scenario will be divided by 45. It's still very little because setting up a new shop costs thousands of pounds. And this development is a £3 billion development. So 334,000 is nothing in proportion, in comparison to the whole scheme. We still think that can be improved. I mean, the fact that Southwark pledged 200,000 extra is a proof that even though consultation period has finished, there's still a room for improvements on the scheme. And now we're focusing on the relocation for those traders who still don't have a place.
Yeah, and that's about 17 traders, right, who don't have a place. Is it 9 who? Sorry,
well, it's way more. It's way more. We have done our research and we have published this, and it's in the region of the 40s. Unfortunately, not all of them have. Some of them have not been relocated by compensation. So we think that this figure is important because there are traders, regardless of the compensation or not, that would be still trading and serving the local community had it not been for the redevelopment. So there's at least 33 acknowledged by Southwark Council because they were paid an initial payment from this £200,000 grant. So within the region of the late 30s to around 40 is the number of people who still have.
Yeah, that's massive. I didn't really appreciate that. Looking more widely at how we've been hit by coronavirus just in these last few minutes, a lot of the time things were centralised in central London, and what we're seeing, I guess, is villages popping up around London where people are more interested in their local shop or their local community, and hopefully there will be a build in that community spirit. What do you think that means for gentrification and projects like what the Delancey are planning to do?
The coronavirus, the pandemic, has been yet another struggle for the traders who were already struggling with regeneration. So obviously, there's no need to explain how there's a high street crisis, and obviously we'll probably get into, if not already, into a recession. So this hits particularly small businesses very hard. So but people still need their specialized goods, affordable goods, and they want to buy preferably local. So this is why we have been very adamant about preserving local businesses because they are at the heart of the community. It has been very difficult, and you mentioned earlier about the rent-free period, and this is again something that we have been adamant about, specifically because of this crisis. We have to say that it was a good initiative that the developers committed to having rent-free period until closure. But obviously, because the footfall went down so much, you can expect to get rent from traders who are being forced out to a new place.
That makes sense. I guess one of my final questions is, how can people help? How can someone watching this, what's the best action they could take?
Well, they can definitely stick to our social media channels, where we're at Latin Elephant. We update with everything that's going on. They can buy local. This was one of the small campaigns that we ran during the pandemic with the hashtag buy local, buy elephant, to support the local businesses. And obviously, if you're active, if you're a local resident, if you are a constituent of the ward North Walworth and St George's, which is where the shopping centre sits at Southwark, write to your local councillors. And if you feel about the local businesses and about the traders not having a place, tell them that you want them in your neighbourhood, in your area, and tell them that they deserve a place, because again, the redevelopment should be for the local community.
Perfect, and that seems a beautiful place to end that there, just asking people to talk in their local community and speak out for people. Santiago, thank you so much for coming on, and thank you for all the brilliant work you're doing, both with Latin Elephant and in the community generally.
Thank you, Zach.
My pleasure. As always, the 20 minutes flies by. Please do go support Extinction Rebellion in their specific actions, tweet, get out there, get loud, and also make sure you're following at Latin Elephant. Thank you very much, and see you next Tuesday. Be kind.
Victoria Line.